Hey there, hockey fans. Nick Hart back again, coming to you from Isolation Station, hanging out with you live on the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins social media channels, back for another episode of Wednesday Bubble Wrap, where we're talking about all the action taking place in Toronto and Edmonton, the NHL's two hub cities for the ongoing Stanley Cup Playoffs. The last time we talked to you folks, it was back in the first round, when actually some of those first round series were nearing their end. We brought you all the stats analysis, all the discussion of the storylines that we could cobble together and put together in this show for you. Now we're in round two, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to do the same exact thing. All the news that you need to know about the ongoing Stanley Cup playoffs taking place during this edition of Bubble Wrap. So once again, we are live on the Penguins social media channel, so thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. You can always hop in the comments, get engaged in the conversation as the show is ongoing. But in the meantime, I will now conversate our way to the existing bracket, the look of the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. Washington, Montreal, Calgary, Arizona, Chicago, Carolina, Columbus, and St. Louis, the defending Stanley Cup champions. They've all been sent home, ousted in the first round. And now we are left with 8 teams in these Stanley Cup playoffs: the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, the Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lightning, Vegas Golden Knights, Vancouver Canucks, Philadelphia Flyers, and New York Islanders. Those are the 8 squads still vying for the Stanley Cup. And let's start our series overviews right now for the second round with the series that's currently playing right now this afternoon at first intermission right now. The Philadelphia Flyers and New York Islanders engaging in game 2 of their series. Game 1 firmly on the side of the Islanders. And don't look now, but the Isles may have something special cooking here. These aren't necessarily the underdog Islanders of 1993, but this is a club that has flown under the radar despite playing confident and winning games convincingly. They almost swept Washington in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. They ultimately took care of the Caps in 5 games. Now they shut out the Flyers in game 1 of this series. However, so far today, the Flyers trying to swing the pendulum back in their favor, up 3-0 already in game 2 in the first period. Hollywood Hayes having a big day with 2 goals in the first 10 minutes of that first period. Sean Couturier tacking on the other one to give the Flyers the 3-0 lead. So unless the Islanders can stage a big comeback here, we could be looking at an even series and that Atlantic Division tilt between the Flyers and Islanders. The first time those two teams have faced off in the Stanley Cup playoffs since the late 80s, if you can believe it or not. Now on to the other series taking place in the Eastern Conference, and oh boy, this is a big boy bout. The Tampa Bay Lightning and the Boston Bruins. In fact, Bruins coach Bruce Cassidy called this a matchup of the top of the class in the Eastern Conference. We're going to call it the Clash of the Titans because these truly are 2 of the best teams in the National Hockey League. Here are their stats, respectively, in a lot of important categories from the regular season. You saw Boston had the best record in the league, winning the President's Trophy. Tampa Bay not far behind with just 1 fewer win than the Bruins, with the 4th best record overall in the league. These 2 teams, top 10 in just about every category, with one exception on each side. Tampa Bay having a middling penalty kill, while the Boston Bruins, on the other hand, 12th place in Corsi possession numbers at 5-on-5. But geez, oh man, top 10 in just about every other statistic. Tampa Bay with the number 1 ranked offense in the NHL during the regular season, going up against the Bruins, who had the best defense and best team goaltending between Tuukka Rask and, of course, Yaroslav Halak, who's their goaltender right now in the playoffs. Boy, oh boy, this is Tyson versus Ali right here. This is a true bona fide showdown right here. And it's been that way so far through the first 2 games of this series. You have the Tampa Bay Lightning falling short in game 1 to the Boston Bruins. The Bruins had a 3-0 lead. The Lightning charged back in the third, but just a 1-goal decision when it was all said and done. The Bruins take game 1 3-2. Then another back-and-forth teeter-totter match in game 2 yesterday night. An exciting one that ultimately ended in the Lightning's favor. Ondrej Palat with the overtime game-winning goal to give the Lightning the 4-3 win and ultimately tie this series at 1 game apiece. That is going to be appointment television moving forward, including tonight. They're playing back-to-back. A lot of back-to-back games in these Stanley Cup playoffs with the NHL trying to condense their schedules in the bubble. Now you can see it right there. Tonight, 8 p.m., prime time, ladies and gentlemen, Tampa Bay versus Boston. Do the Lightning start to string together a bit of a winning streak here, or do the Bruins bounce back and reassume the series lead? So from the East, now let's go to the West, where we see the Vancouver Canucks taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. That was another game that took place last night, with the Canucks ultimately evening the series 1 game apiece, but 2 totally wildly different games through the first 2 tilts in this one. Vancouver was one of the feel-good teams to emerge from the first round, but they were seriously brought back to earth in game 1 of their series against Vegas. The Golden Knights teaching them a lesson, stomping on the Canucks 5-0, outclassing them in every single way. But you saw Vancouver bounce back in a huge way in game 2, getting the 5-2 victory over the Vegas Golden Knights. But don't let that 3-goal margin confuse you. That game was a lot closer than the score would suggest. The Vegas Golden Knights certainly did not roll over. Yes, they started slow. They allowed Vancouver to get the early lead, but Vegas ultimately tripling Vancouver in shot attempts. They generated 40 shots on goal, plus they had an additional 40 shots blocked by the Canucks. Think about that. Vegas had just as many shots on goal as they had blocked shots. But that's more of a testament to the Vancouver Canucks as well, just finding a way to grind out the win. They've been known for their speed and skill. That's how they've been winning the hearts of a lot of hockey fans so far in this playoff run. But they showed a lot of serious resolve and some sandpaper determination to block 40 shots and the way to clinging and grinding out that Game 2 victory. So Vegas, Vancouver, tied up 1 game apiece through 2 games. Now we go to the final series in the Western Conference, one where, it's another exciting Western Conference showdown, but this one team has earned a rather large edge through 2 games. The Dallas Stars lead the series 2-0, with Dallas scoring 5 times, 10 total, 5 in each of the games, against the Colorado Avalanche. Avs coach Jared Bednar calling out his team after game 1, saying that their big guns, their star players showed up, but everyone else wasn't ready to play. Certainly strong words from the Avs bench boss. But the fact of the matter is, this might be the result of some injuries really piling up here for the Colorado Avalanche here. They've been stacking up not just a couple dinged up guys here and there, some significant contributors to this lineup falling by the wayside for Colorado. You see Matt Calvert, real spunky and fast, really fast, and thorn in the side type player that can contribute on the score sheet as well. He's missed the past couple of games, listed day-to-day at this point. Bad news on the injury front for these other guys for the Avs. Eric Johnson, perhaps their top defensive defenseman on the team, a guy who blocks a ton of shots and matches up a ton against the opponent's top offensive threats. He has been listed as out indefinitely by Avs head coach Jared Bednar, so it looks like his return in the playoffs is unlikely. Same thing with their goaltender, their starting goalie, Philip Grubauer, who was cash money through the round robin in the first round of the playoffs here in the bubble in Edmonton. He re-aggravated an injury that was bothering him back in the regular season and through the training camp of the return-to-play protocol, and he too is listed as out indefinitely. So the injuries snowballing now for the Colorado Avalanche. Meanwhile, on the other side of this series, the Dallas Stars are having guys step up in a big, big way. Guys heating up, some young stars and a familiar face. These are some rising stars here for the Dallas Stars on the blue line. Miro Heiskanen having himself a stellar playoff season. He's been fantastic since joining the National Hockey League a couple seasons ago for Dallas, a true rising star, not just for Dallas, but also overall in the National Hockey League. 14 points for the blue liner, has him 3rd overall in the league in that category. Furthermore, you have Denis Gurianov, a former AHL star with the Texas Stars, putting the biscuit in the basket for Dallas. 6 goals, 8 points, a huge game for Gurianov in the finale of their first-round series against Calgary. And lastly, Joe Pavelski. He's the familiar face, the guy you know all too well. They called him Little Joe in San Jose instead of Jumbo Joe, Joe Thornton, but he's no average Joe for the Dallas Stars. He already has a hat trick in these playoffs and 9 points, 7 goals has him near the top of the league leaderboard in that category as well. And since we're talking about Denis Gurianov, this provides us with the perfect transition now to our performance of the week. It was Joe Pavelski, a Dallas Star, last week earning this honor. We're going to keep it with the Stars with Denis Gurianov. As I mentioned before, he had a huge game in that series-clinching win against the Calgary Flames. It was Game 6 the past Thursday, so 6 days ago. He scored 4 times. Not in the series, in that game, with a chance for the Stars to move on to the next round. They were trailing in the game. Gurianov helps spearhead the comeback with 4 tallies, including a hat trick scored in 14 minutes and 31 seconds of game time, all taking place in the second period. So very impressive stuff from the youngster, Denis Gurianov, a breakout performance for him. And you see the Dallas Stars continuing to climb up a lot of people's expectations, if you will. They were one of the top 4 teams in the Western Conference when the return to play started. They stumbled a bit through the round robin, but now they're returning to form, much to the dismay of the Colorado Avalanche. Now let's take a peek, at the leaders so far in these Stanley Cup playoffs, individual performers who are doing quite well in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Last time we checked in, Bo Horvat led the league in goals, still leads the league in goals after 2 tallies last night against the Vegas Golden Knights, not too far behind Nate MacKinnon and Joe Pavelski. Nate MacKinnon, though, he'll be happy to take the league lead in points. 18 points, the most in the league. Elias Pettersson and Miro Heiskanen not too far behind him. And then in the save percentage board, Semyon Varlamov might be taking a bit of a hit on those numbers with the outburst of the Philadelphia Flyers in the first period of that game today. But a very impressive playoff so far for Varlamov. Jonas Korpisalo still with one of the best save percentages in the league, despite the fact that he and the Columbus Blue Jackets have been bounced. I'm afraid a lot of people are going to end up forgetting about what Korpisalo was able to do for the Jackets in this postseason because they ended up bowing out so early. But the Blue Jackets making their presence felt yet again in the Stanley Cup playoffs. They did so last year, did so again this year, only to fall short of the conference finals, the Stanley Cup. Who knows? Maybe that Stanley Cup is in the future someday for the Blue Jackets, but not to be right now. We've got 8 teams left vying for Lord Stanley's Cup, and that means plenty of players available to win the MVP, the Conn Smythe Trophy, as the league's MVP, one of the most prestigious awards given out in the game of hockey. So now let's revisit our Conn Smythe leaderboard and some serious changes on our Conn Smythe power rankings from last week. We had a handful of players get eliminated from the playoffs, so they're falling off of our Conn Smythe power rankings, obviously. We see 5 new players that weren't in our top 7 last week now leapfrog into our top 7 in our much too early Conn Smythe power rankings, including Nate MacKinnon. No surprise, he leads the pack with his league-leading 18 points. He's so good, just electrifying with the puck on his stick with his combination of speed and power, and of course, hockey sense as well. Miro Heiskanen, the defenseman that's gotten so much love so far from us here on this edition of Bubble Wrap, 3rd in the league in points, averaging over 25 minutes, close to 26 minutes of ice time a game. He is a do-it-all D-man for the Dallas Stars. He provides offense, he provides defense, and seamless transition play, and he is playing some of the best hockey of his career during these Stanley Cup playoffs. Not too far behind, Elias Pettersson. Oh my goodness, the hands on this young man showcased him with a beautiful goal last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. He's in 3rd. Moving down the list, Victor Hedman was in 4th last week. He's going to stay in 4th place. He's not a defenseman you look for from offense when you're talking about guys like a Heiskanen or a Quinn Hughes or a Cale Makar, but he's just a beast. Oh my goodness, you do not want to be on the ice if you're an opponent at the same time as Victor Hedman because he's so punishing physically. He provides blanket coverage, and he can move the puck up ice. Whenever Victor Hedman's on the ice, the other team isn't scoring too often, and the Tampa Bay Lightning are typically controlling the pace of play. And right behind Victor Hedman, we have his teammate, Braden Point, who has showed up with some clutch goals in these playoffs for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Some overtime game-winning goals, a series-winning goal. Beautiful play last night against the Boston Bruins. Among the league leaders now with 12 points in these playoffs, and one of the best expected goal rates, expected goals per 60 minutes, those advanced stats provided to us by naturalstattrick.com. We saw some astronomical numbers in that category last week when we were going through the much too early Conn Smythe power rankings. Now they're starting to fall back down to earth with a little bit of a larger sample size, but Braden Point, one of the most productive forwards in that category. Semyon Varlamov, rising into our top 7, is the only goaltender right now. No surprise, as he is tied for the league lead in wins with 8 wins in these playoffs. Leads all goaltenders in goals against average. Also tied for the league lead in save percentage and shutouts. Lastly, we have Quinn Hughes, who was up in 3rd place in our previous power rankings. He falls down to 7, but he's still in our top 7. And guys, you can't forget about that are honorable mentions right now. You have Flyers goaltender Carter Hart, of course, Dallas Stars forward Joe Pavelski, and even Vegas Golden Knights defenseman Shea Theodore. His underlying numbers, his advanced metrics are among the best among all players in the playoffs. Might be a dark horse for the Conn Smythe, depending on how far the Vegas Golden Knights can continue to trudge along here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Furthermore, I want to talk about all the wild stuff that's been happening in the playoffs this year. It's been 2020, a weird year, of course, as we all know. But that is now extended to the bubbles of both Toronto and Edmonton, where we've seen several records set during these Stanley Cup playoffs as well. Check out this. These are all of the records that have been set just already in the play-in, first, and early second round of these playoffs. Dominik Kubalik of the Chicago Blackhawks set the NHL record for most points by a player in their playoff debut. 5 points against the Edmonton Oilers back when the teams returned to play on August 1st. Quinn Hughes, that rookie defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks, he has tied the longest point streak by a rookie defenseman in league history at 6 games. Of course, there was the 4th longest game in league history when we saw the Tampa Bay Lightning and Columbus Blue Jackets play in a 5 overtime epic in that game. Jonas Korpisalo set the league record for most saves in a game with 85, and Seth Jones logged the most ice time in a game at over 65 minutes. He played over a full game of ice time, ladies and gentlemen. Impressive stuff from Seth Jones and Jonas Korpisalo, but like I said before, the Jackets back home watching the rest of the playoffs like you and I. Furthermore, that game before where Denis Gurianov had the 4 goals, our performance of the week, the series-clinching win by Dallas over Calgary, that was also the first time in league history that a team trailed by 3 goals and then won that same game by 4 goals. They were down 3-0 within the first 7 minutes of the first period, if you can believe that or not. But instead of just packing up and getting ready for Game 7, the Stars went back to work, scored the next 7 goals, dominating the Flames, and ultimately advancing to round 2. And this is a quirky one right here that I really had to dig deep and go back into the record books to figure out. This year is the first time since the 7-game first round was introduced in the NHL in the late 70s, early 80s. This is the first time that a first round has been completed without a sweep or a Game 7. There was no Game 7 in the first round, and there was no sweep. Every series went either 5 or 6 games. That is the first time that has ever happened. In fact, you could go back to whenever the NHL was doing best of 5 first round of the playoffs, and there still wasn't an instance of no sweep and no Game 7. Wild stuff, but the kind of year that we've had this year, of course, funky stuff like that has been happening in hockey as well, and those are just some quirky records that have been set so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Well, we've been chatting away for close to 20 minutes now. We've covered a lot of ground in these Stanley Cup playoffs, but you know what? There's still so much more that we can talk about. But instead of me yapping and yapping away, let's give you guys, the fans, a chance to get a word in. Or some questions in, I should say. What we're going to do now on Bubble Wrap presented by Coors Light is open up the phone lines for some calls. We're going to get some totally 100% real questions from the townsfolk and chat it up using your questions. We're calling this the Hockey Heartline. Get it? Get it? So get your questions ready, ladies and gentlemen. The phone lines, we're going to open these up. Just call this number below. Oh, and we already have our first caller. That was quick. Who saw that coming? All right. Well, let's open up the phone lines now and get this bad boy going. Let's start with our first caller here on the Hockey Heartline. Let's talk to This is Hank from Clearwater, Florida. How about that? Okay. Go ahead, Hank. What do you have to say?
Hello?
Yes, Hank?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Hank. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Nick. This is Hank in Clearwater, Florida. I wanted to know what's going on with the Tampa Bay Lightning power play. It's not any good. They're not scoring. I wanted to know why that is. Thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, Hank. Thanks for the call. But yeah, the Tampa Bay Lightning, for all of their offensive gifts, as we showed before on that Clash of the Titans graphic, they had the best record in the league during the regular season. They had one of the best power plays in the league during the regular season. But that special teams prowess hasn't carried over here to the bubble. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the Tampa Bay Lightning are only 2 for 20 on the power play in these playoffs, including the round robin as well. And now they're on a long drought, too. The Lightning have gone, I think it's double digits now, over 12, 13, 14 maybe, consecutive power plays without scoring a single goal. And for a team that has the talent like the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is far from normal. And it's a drought happening at the wrong time of the year. So fans like Hank in Clearwater, and I'm sure many other fans of the Bolts, are concerned as to what's going on right now. And just by my viewings, specifically last night when you're watching the game, you're hearing this storyline over and over again, Tampa's power play, not scoring. You keep assuming, all right, this is the one where they're going to break through because they have guys like Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Mikhail Sergachev on the point with his big bomb, just, a litany of weapons for the Tampa Bay Lightning power play. Now, I should say, it doesn't help that they've gone up against the Boston Bruins penalty kill, third best in the league in the regular season, and they've been just as good in the playoffs, and the Columbus Blue Jackets, who had a hard-working, good penalty kill as well. That's not helping their case. But what's really hurting the Tampa Bay Lightning right now is a lot of what I've noticed is, one, they need to shoot a little bit more. That seems to be a common refrain for a lot of teams' power plays that tend to go cold. They look for the pretty player. They hang on to the puck just a little bit too long. They don't have that shooting confidence, and then passing lanes disappear, shooting lanes disappear, goalies get into position. That's holding them back a little bit. But furthermore, despite the fact that they're not shooting, they're not getting consistent traffic in front. They want to get eyes in front of Yaroslav Hulak, who at times for Boston has looked really, really good for the Boston Bruins as their backup now turned starter. And then there are other times where he's looked a little bit shaky. He can be a little bit inconsistent. You don't know when that moment of error is going to pop up for Yaroslav Halak. It seems to just pop up glitch every so often, including on that overtime game winner by the Bolts last night. But you get bodies in front, you can generate those kind of things more often. You can lead to those glitches, result in them, and their puck pursuit, getting to those pucks first. Columbus and especially Boston, they've been beating the Lightning to pucks whenever they try and get the puck in the zone. Their retrievals not necessarily on point. Tampa Bay has really raised their gritty game, their grinding game in these playoffs compared to years past. But a lot of those players don't necessarily play on the power play, and that same compete level seems to just tone down just a little bit, turn down just a little bit on the power play, and just going from maybe a 7 to a 6 in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's enough to really decimate your effectiveness on the power play, especially when the other team's penalty kill is good and they're going to work harder than you. So that's my diagnosis for what's going on with the Tampa Bay power play. We'll see if that remains a storyline for the Bolts as we move through these Stanley Cup playoffs. Now let's go to the next call. Why not? Here on the Hockey Heartline, numbers up. Oh, and second call is in. Second call is in. Who is this? This is Tony in Uniondale. Tony, you're on the Hockey Heartline.
Hello, is this the Hockey Hotline?
Yes, it is, Tony. Go for it.
Okay. Now, Nick, I've enjoyed the show. Big fan of the show. I like what you're doing. You make a lot of good points.
Thank
I
you.
like to listen to you talk about the game.
Thanks, Tony.
But, listen, you're being a little disrespectful. I want to know why you're not talking more about the New York Islanders. They've been one and two teams like a bullet train in the first 2 rounds, and you're just not talking about them at all. Where's the love for the New York Islanders?
Okay, Tony. I get your point. The New York Islanders have been nothing short of fantastic in these Stanley Cup playoffs. They were a wild card, a big question mark coming into these Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, most teams were after the stoppage, but the fact of the matter is this is a team that plays an extremely structured system under Barry Trotz that they can slow down opposing offenses, really frustrate other teams, but they were not the best team going into the break. In fact, they were one of the worst teams in the NHL before the stoppage. So that's why I think a lot of people weren't giving a lot of attention to the Islanders, including myself, coming into these playoffs. Then they decimate Florida in the play-in round. They cut through Washington, the Washington Capitals, in 5 games in round 2 and look pretty darn good while doing it. And then in game 1 against the Philadelphia Flyers, they're off to the races again with a 4-0 shutout. Now, things not going as well today for the Isles as those previous contests, but when it comes to the New York Islanders, I think they deserve a lot of respect for the way that they play with structure, but the way that they are able to capitalize on their opportunities. That's what I think is big with them. When you talk about the Islanders, people speak with them in such a way that makes it sound like they're playing New Jersey Devils trap hockey of the 90s. And make no mistake, between the blue lines, it's a nightmare to play the New York Islanders. They make zone entries so difficult. They make it hard to make clean plays in the neutral zone and attack with speed. They're going to do everything they can to slow you down and gum things up. But the thing is, when their opportunities pop up, they're cashing in. They're not winning games 1-0, 2-1. They're scoring 3, 4, sometimes even 5 goals a game. Furthermore, the fact that the Islanders are sort of missing a bona fide superstar. They don't have one guy that's driving the bus, but everyone steps up and does their job. They're a team, an old school team in that regard, where everybody has a defined role and they perform it to a T. Josh Bailey is having himself a fantastic playoffs, playing some of the best hockey I've seen him play in his career. Captain Anders Lee has done his job when called upon. Matt Barzal obviously provides the highlight reel goals. Anthony Beauvillier, for my money, one of the most underrated players in the league when it comes to being a goal scorer. He's a little bit hot and cold, but he's hot right now for the New York Islanders, among the league's goal-scoring leaders in these playoffs. And I'm a big Devon Taves guy. I've been a fan of his ever since he was playing against the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins for the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. And everybody's just doing their job for the New York Islanders, so they probably should be getting more love from myself and other pundits. But now they got to worry about the Philadelphia Flyers, not what other people are talking about, because it looks like Philly is poised to tie this series at 1 game apiece. All right, now on to our next caller. The calls are flying in here on the Hockey Heartline. This one is Billy. Billy in Indiana. I wonder if that's the state of Indiana or perhaps Indiana, PA. All right, Billy, you're on the air. Are you in Indiana, Pennsylvania, or Indiana, Indiana?
Hello.
Yeah, Billy, where are you at? You in PA?
I was on Twitter, okay, and I noticed that the NHL said that the Arizona Coyotes lost draft picks. I love Phil Kessel, and I wanted to know what happened and why the Coyotes lost those draft picks. Thank you.
All right, yes, thank you for the call, Billy. I guess we'll never know where you were calling from, but that's okay because you like Phil Kessel. I like Phil Kessel too, Billy. But yeah, some big news coming out from the National Hockey League earlier this afternoon, as our great caller, Billy, thank you for the call, Billy, alluded to. The Arizona Coyotes have been punished by the National Hockey League, forfeiting draft picks for violating the NHL's combine testing policy. Now, before I get into the punishment, I'm going to try and sort of explain what happened here without getting into the raw details, because frankly, we don't know a lot of the raw details. It's not really publicly out there right now. But the NHL hosts an annual draft combine where a bunch of players ranked so high by NHL Central Scouting are brought to Buffalo usually, do a bunch of testing, and then everyone goes on their way. Then teams are allowed to invite players that they liked at the combine or players that didn't make the cut for the combine, invite them to their own facility and do a little bit of NHL regulated testing of their own before the draft. The Arizona Coyotes at some point stepped out of bounds during this process and may have been testing players outside of the boundaries of when they were supposed to be, the time frame of when they could test these players, whether they be from college or juniors or what have you. Word got out. The NHL found out about it. This punishment had been looming over the Coyotes for a while, to the point where I had honestly forgotten about the infraction by Arizona, but the NHL brought the hammer down today. Here's the punishment for the Arizona Coyotes. They have lost a 2020 second-round pick, so that's a second-round pick at this year's draft, and here's the real doozy, a 2021 first-round pick. So the Coyotes lose a second-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year for violating the NHL's combine testing policy. Now, Arizona had already traded its first-round pick this year for Taylor Hall, and they had traded this year's third-round pick last summer to Colorado in exchange for Carl Soderberg. So, quickly in my head, no first rounder this year. They lose the second rounder this year in this forfeit, and they already traded their third rounder. So no picks for Arizona until the fourth round this year, and potentially no picks until the third round of next year's draft because they forfeited their first rounder in 2021, and there's a condition on their second rounder that might end up going to the New Jersey Devils as part of the Taylor Hall trade too. So this is the NHL punishing a team like I have never seen before. I've never seen anything like this from the NHL. The only thing that I can remember is when the New Jersey Devils actually were hit hard for cap circumvention, signing Ilya Kovalchuk to a wild contract that was ultimately voided by the NHL, and then the Devils were punished by forfeiting a first-round pick that the NHL ultimately gave back to them anyway. So we'll see if this punishment holds for the Arizona Coyotes, but certainly, I don't know if this really qualifies as big news. I'm not sure how much this is going to move the needle, especially because Arizona is a small market team. But man, oh man, that is a real kick to the jaw for the Arizona Coyotes, a team that's sort of in the mushy middle. They want to go up. They want to continue to climb the rungs of the Western Conference. It's going to be hard to do without picking until the fourth round this year and potentially not even until the third round next year. All right, here on the Hockey Heartline, we have time for one more call. Don't want to keep you folks too long, but the phone lines have been absolutely flooded at this point. This next call comes to us from Paul in Westmoreland. Paul, go ahead.
Hey, Nick, this is Paul in Westmoreland County.
Hi, Paul. How's it going?
Yeah, I know the Penguins ain't in the playoffs no more, but some Penguins news yesterday with the trade, Jimmy Rutherford wheeling and dealing as he's known to do. Kasperi Kapanen coming back to the black and gold. Want to get your thoughts on the trade and what this move is looking like for the Penguins. All right, thanks. Love your show.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Thanks for that call. Yeah, some Pittsburgh Penguins news happening yesterday. As our friend Paul in Westmoreland mentioned, Pittsburgh Penguins not in the playoffs anymore, but this trade taking place yesterday. The Pittsburgh Penguins making a deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs, bringing Kasperi Kapanen back to the black and gold. Kapanen, a first-round pick of the Penguins in 2014. He was ultimately traded to Toronto in exchange for Phil Kessel. He played a handful of games for Wilkes-Barre Scranton, you fans may remember. Penguins also receiving the rights to forward Pontus Ahlberg, a very good American Hockey League player, sort of a tweener. He can play in the NHL and dominate at the American Hockey League level, and defenseman prospect Jesper Lindgren. Going the other way in the trade, though, Toronto receives the rights to pending RFA Evan Rodriguez. Pittsburgh's first-round pick this year, that was 15th overall, prospect Philip Hollander, and this is the one that's attracted a lot of attention here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins captain David Warsofsky, or I should say Penguins captain no more, because David Warsofsky now going to the six as part of this trade. David Warsofsky came back to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins this season after spending a couple years away, playing primarily in the Western Conference of the American Hockey League. We know Dougie Warsofsky for how well he played for the Penguins in his first stint, ultimately becoming an all-star with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins that year. Came back this season, got the C on his chest, was great on the power play for Wilkes-Barre Scranton, was tied for the league lead among all defensemen in power play goals. Really productive for the Penguins in that regard, and was a great leadership presence in the locker room. So you lose that front for Wilkes-Barre Scranton, but still have a great leadership core. Guys like Zach Trotman, Kevin Churchman, still poised to return for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins this year on the blue line. But I think I speak for everyone when it comes to the Penguins' hockey upside in the front office, and of course the fans, the people who would crowd the seats at Mohegan Sun Arena at Casey Plaza, wishing Dougie Warsofsky nothing but the best for he and his family in the future. We heard from him on our Penguins pregame show, The Early Bird. He and his wife expecting their first child not too far in the future. So an exciting future ahead for David Warsofsky, regardless of where he's playing, though it looks like it's going to be in one of the best hockey markets known to man, the city of Toronto, Ontario. So once again, good luck to David Warsofsky and his family. Thanks for all the great memories here with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. When it comes to the return for Pittsburgh. Kasperi Kapanen is a guy who goes right into the top 9 for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's playing primarily in a third-line role after really rounding out his body of work with Toronto. Plays with a lot more pace, a lot more fire than perhaps when he first started out as a pro hockey player, when he was trying to play maybe only an east-west or a skill game. Now he's north-south, and he still has that skill element to his game, but maybe he's a guy who fits in nicely as a puzzle piece with Sidney Crosby. Once again, a guy who's going to play a north-south game, hunt down pucks, be responsible in his own zone, and have the skill to chip in offensively. It'd be interesting to see where Kasperi Kapanen slots in with the Pittsburgh Penguins, whether it be on the first line with Sid, on the second line with Gino, or maybe provide some offensive potency to a third line moving forward for Pittsburgh. Also, Pittsburgh made some moves. We might as well mention this too. Some players being signed by the Penguins organization last week, starting with Josh Maniscalco, signed a defenseman out of Arizona State University to an NHL deal by Pittsburgh. The David Warsofsky being moved to Toronto in that trade, that opens up some space for Maniscalco to really strut his stuff perhaps on the power play for Wilkes-Barre Scranton this upcoming season. His 11 goals in the NCAA, tied for the second most among all defensemen, and his 32 points, 6 overall among the NCAA Blue Liners. Then you have 2 forwards, Felix Robert and Luke Stevens. Robert coming from the QMJHL, where he was one of the best offensive producers in that entire league. 36 goals, 92 points in just a little over 40 games played. More than just about 2 points per game for Felix Robert. It's going to be fun to see how he begins his pro career with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. And then Luke Stevens, a big body, plays with some snarl to go along with his smarts. Career highs in goals and points this year, playing for Yale University in the NCAA. So looking forward to seeing those 3 players begin their pro careers, expectedly with Wilkes-Barre Scranton at the start of the 2020-21 season. Some other Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins news for you folks still tuned in with us here on Bubble Wrap Wednesday, presented by Coors Light. Penguins have another episode of From the Vault airing on Facebook. You can check that out live tomorrow night. The Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins playing the Albany River Rats, a game from the archives. It's going to be a fun one. All these From the Vault games are fun. I don't know why I even mentioned that, because whenever we're picking it out of the vault of the archives to show you folks, it's going to be a good one. We're not giving you a 1-1 tie sleepy game in the dog days of February. Nope. You're going to want to tune in to see the Penguins take on the Albany River Rats tomorrow. Furthermore, we still have Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins masks on sale on WilkesBarreScrantonPenguins.com. Make sure you're following along on the Penguins social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, you need to drill at this point, to see when those dash auctions are going to pop up now and then. We're going to have more Breaking the Ice events. They've been extremely popular throughout the summer, so make sure you're still tuning in, checking in, popping your head in every now and then to see what kind of auctions are going up for the Penguins, and not just the Breaking the Ice events, other cool stuff that the Penguins are always putting up on the Dash Auction app. Make sure you're checking those out, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so not a lot of time left for us here on Bubble Wrap, plus I'm sure you fans are going to want to watch the rest of that game between the Philadelphia Flyers and New York Islanders. But before we sign off, we got to go back and revisit the bandwagon rankings for Bubble Wrap, okay? We're going to get on the bandwagon now and figure out who you should be cheering for in the rest of these Stanley Cup playoffs. The last time we talked about this, there were still 14 teams left in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Only 2 had been eliminated in the first round. Now we're down to a field of 8. So the bandwagon field has been cut down significantly. But where do we fall now in the bandwagon rankings? Let's start with the team that we have ranked 5th on the bandwagon, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning. We saw them in 5th place in last week's rankings. They still have all the talent in the world on both sides of the puck. Plus, they're showing a lot of grit, a lot of moxie, the kind of stuff that may have been missing in previous past kicks at the can. Is this the year that the Tampa Bay Lightning get over the hump and lift Lord Stanley? Perhaps. Plus the ongoing saga of Steven Stamkos. Will he or won't he return? That provides great intrigue from a fan perspective. If you jump on the Lightning bandwagon now, you could reap great rewards later if and when number 91 returns to the ice. Now on to number 4 in our rankings. This is a riser from our initial rankings a week ago. The Dallas Stars leapfrogging the Lightning from last week, now up to number 4, and here's why. In the regular season, Dallas was a stingy team with a lot of talent, but they had trouble scoring goals. During the round robin and the return to play, this team really struggled to score, and they really struggled to find their groove in general. After a game or two in the first round, those woes are well in the rear view window. These guys are clicking. They can't not score at this point, living up to the potential of a roster that boasts names like Joe Pavelski, Tyler Seguin, and Jamie Benn up front. Furthermore, you have a future Norris Trophy winner on the back end and Miro Heiskanen. Jump on his bandwagon if you haven't already. Trust me, you're going to want to jump on the Miro Heiskanen bandwagon. Furthermore, the Stars have one of the great personalities in the league with Anton Hudobin in net between the pipes in the place of the injured Ben Bishop. He's always a fun guy, provides a great quote after games, and plays with a certain flair in net. The way this team has refused to lie down in any game, regardless of their deficit or how much time is left in regulation, that kind of stuff, it deserves your admiration, and it may even deserve your bandwagon support. Now on to number 3 on the bandwagon. Colorado Avalanche, staying in the 3 spot from our previous bandwagon rankings. The Avs, now they currently find themselves in a 2-0 hole in their series with the aforementioned Dallas Stars. But they have the firepower to not only make it a series, but to even go deep in this tournament. It's all about the young stars with the Colorado Avalanche. Nathan MacKinnon leads the playoffs in scoring. He is appointment television, ladies and gentlemen. Furthermore, the Robin to McKinnon's Batman, Mikko Rantanen, he's been enjoying a productive playoffs as well. Colorado's power play is practically automatic, and everybody loves a flashy and productive power play. And now they may even be adopting a bit of an unforeseen underdog status after falling behind 2-0 in this second-round series, but also losing key players like a top defenseman and their starting goalie to injury. So Colorado Avalanche at 3. At number 2, they were number 1. Now they're in second place, the Vegas Golden Knights. Pound for pound, this is still probably the most impressive team in the bubble so far. They may not have a top-of-the-marquee, sexy, take-over-a-game kind of superstar on their roster, but every stat that you can find suggests that this club is a juggernaut. It doesn't matter if it's a traditional stat like goals for or more fancy stats like Corsi and expected goals. The Golden Knights are at the top of the list in all of those categories. Also, they pass the eye test with flying colors. If you don't even want to throw the stat sheets out the window and just look at how they're playing, boy, oh boy, they're good. They are relentless. And that relentless, heavy style of hockey may not be an art show, but it's definitely entertaining to watch. Plus, a guy like Ryan Reeves has even managed to keep the stoppages between plays entertaining with his antics as well. Now, weird controversies like the Alan Walsh tweet and the way that they tend to throw fits sometimes after a loss, that holds them back in the rankings a little bit, though, giving way to our number 1 team on the bandwagon. Vegas' opponent in this second-round series, the Vancouver Canucks. They were second on our list last week, and now they move up to numero 1 because I may have undersold how fun this team is the last time we did these rankings. Once again, if you are not staying up late to watch the Vancouver Canucks games, do that now. Do it. Players like Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, they're poetry in motion, ladies and gentlemen. They attack in waves, and they do it at such an impressive pace, showcasing their skill and speed on a nightly basis. And when this team is on, they're an absolute delight. When they're not on, well, the game still manages to be exciting because they start bleeding scoring chances, and that's when their goaltender, Jakob Markstrom, starts doing the acrobatics to keep the game as close as he can. They're not perfect, but they're so much fun. They have the leading goal scorer in the postseason, Bo Horvat, an endless amount of talented forwards with Pettersson, Brock Besser, and JT Miller. Plus, they flashed some serious passion and resolve with the way that they bounced back and fought for a win in Game 2 yesterday. Also, it doesn't hurt that, like Vegas, Vancouver is chasing the franchise's first Stanley Cup. That's always an easy storyline to get behind. But unlike the Knights, the Canucks are trying to bring the Stanley Cup back to Canada for the first time since 1993. It's 2020, so why not? And that concludes our bandwagon rankings. Let's look at all the teams so far in the bandwagon, how we're slotting them in here for your potential fanfare. We have Vancouver at number 1, Vegas sliding down to number 2, Colorado at 3, Dallas at number 4. We're saying on the bandwagon, Go West, young man. All 4 Western Conference teams remaining in the top 4. Then in the East, the Tampa Bay Lightning are our top team of the Eastern Conference squads. New York Islanders, Tony and Uniondale isn't going to like it, but I have them at 6. You know, they do deserve some props, but they just don't have that certain je ne sais quoi that you can really get behind right now. Boston, they're a great team. No one can take that away from them, but it really, really is hard to rally behind Boston sports teams, isn't it, folks? And in 8th place, we have Thanos, the Mad Titan, who can just snap the Stanley Cup out of existence. And in 9th place, the Philadelphia Flyers. That concludes this episode of Bubble Wrap, presented by Coors Light. I want to thank you good folks out there for sticking with us throughout this entire episode, getting all the news and updates, stats, and analysis from the Stanley Cup Playoffs bubbles in both Toronto and Edmonton. Plenty of great hockey to come this week, including Philadelphia and the New York Islanders going on right now. So I'll now sign off. Make sure you jotted that number down from earlier so you can call the Hockey Heartline for our next episode when we see you next week on Bubble Wrap. See you later, ladies and gentlemen.